Someone's going to go for 2 and get it at some point.
It's 1:42 in the morning.
Yeah, that's all right. Number 1. Shocker. Iron.
Man, give me the Trojans.
There we go.
Welcome into Overtime, presented by Perfection One. Along with John Bruce, my name is Dewey. Dailey, episode 53 here on the pod. Our first 2-episode week since around this time last year. I know we did a lot of the 2-episode stuff for the fall sports season last year. I think we went to the 1 episode per week format for the winter season. But when you got to preview 8 conferences, 16 if you count both boys and girls, you kind of have to split it up a little bit. So went ahead and went with the 2-episode format for this week, episode 53 of the pod. Talked about the girls on Tuesday. Today we're going to talk about the boys side of our coverage area.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about Ironton football the other day, a little bit Minford soccer. You know, it was a really good fall sports season. We got a lot of that, like in our headlines, to kind of wrap up fall season. Although, if
I did not change the ticker, so it's the exact same.
Okay, good. So if Ironton happens to win tomorrow night or tonight, I don't know when you're putting this out. Happy Thanksgiving, maybe. I don't know.
Thursday, maybe. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
or happy Black Friday. I don't know when he decided to post it. So
we are wearing the exact same clothes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been what, half hour? Yeah. Had some dinner and kind of reconfigured some things.
Shout out Fred's.
Yeah. So
good food.
We had. If Ironton happens to win, we'll preview their state championship game on next week's episode. If not, we're just all winter sports from here on out. So check out our girls basketball preview from the other day. I believe it was put out on Tuesday. And yeah, it should be fun. I will have covered 4 boys basketball games.
You know what else was put up on Tuesday?
I'm excited for this.
The club. The club.
What
club going out, you know what I mean?
No.
You've never heard that song?
No. Who's it by?
Never mind. Just
Who's it by?
I don't remember.
Who goes to the club on a Tuesday?
It's a song.
I definitely didn't go to
Drake's in the song, but it's some like I think it's some like other.
That was probably that was probably
like the club's going up on a Tuesday. You never heard that?
He's more interested in Tuesday's episode anyway.
I can't believe you never heard that.
No,
wow, that was such a good.
Drake was he had a.
It's an older song.
Yeah, but he had a scholarship to North Carolina before he got shot in the back on Degrassi. And then he ended up in a wheelchair, and then he ended up being a rapper. And then I'm watching MTV Hits, I think. It was like channel 139 back in the day. It still might be a channel, I don't know. But watching it on Time Warner and see him come out with Young Money, I'm like, what's the dude from Degrassi doing out there rapping? And I heard him, I'm like, oh, he's good. I guess he was good on Degrassi. Whatever. I'm so old. Sorry.
Oh, you're apparently not old enough because you didn't have any idea what song I was talking about. That's probably like a mid-2000s song.
I don't listen to the lyrics. I listen to... Now I'm listening...
2014.
Okay, see, now I'm listening to K-pop because Bruno Mars has a K-pop song out, and like that's all I listen to.
All right.
I'm just kidding. I listen to 70s on 7 and make you listen to it on the way to games.
Same format today as we had on Tuesday. So the SVC FAC.
Hey, okay. So before you get into that, I'm going to talk about 70s on 7. Yeah, I know. But I had a couple kids, and I tweeted about it, but I had a couple kids in class when I was subbing the other day. We're like, Mr. Bruce, what's your favorite song? So I'm like, man, I gotta think of something that does not have any cuss words in it. I'm gonna go with something they hate. So I took one of the options. My second option was Baker Street by Jerry Rafferty, but my first option was The Chain by Fleetwood Mac. Have you heard either? Okay,
yeah.
It's a really good song. Like one of my favorite songs.
The Chain, the one that's like, you got
maybe. It like starts slower and kind of gets into it, but
it's like thunder going. That
one? No. That's Dreams.
That's still Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, that's Fleetwood Mac.
I feel like
Fleetwood Mac's really good.
I feel like I've heard the Chain one.
You probably
have.
Familiar.
I'll just play it so we get copyright.
Yeah. So I had him listen to the Chain, And I could tell he was listening to something else like 2 minutes later. So I got up and walked over. He was done with his work, by the way. So I was like, did you not like it? He said, not really. I said, okay, I got one for you. So I type in Baker Street. Do you know Baker Street? Baker Street it's a really good song, but it's got like a power jazz saxophone solo in it. It's like, I knew the kid would hate it so much. He puts it on, like, he's like, listens to it. Before it even gets to the saxophone, I see him just go and turn it off. I was so happy. I was like, I bet he's going back to like listening to Lil Nas X or some. I don't know. Lil Nas X isn't even new. Who's someone new?
Someone new?
Yeah, that I would hate.
The Weeknd, maybe.
No, Weeknd's good.
Okay.
Weeknd's like Bruno Mars a little bit, like where every one of his songs is good. No, I'm talking about like one of those like mumble rappers.
Like 6ix9ine or something.
I was just trying to avoid saying that one, but yes, that's exactly who I was thinking of. Like
a mumble rapper, man. I feel like
is that still a thing? I don't know.
Some of them aren't alive anymore, unfortunately.
I was thinking of one. Like who's the one from Chicago?
Juice or
No, not Juice WRLD.
Yeah.
Was it
Nipsey?
No, Nipsey Hussle was a good dude.
XX10 Tacion or whatever. I just named 3 that have died in the last like 5 years.
Yeah, but Nipsey Hussle was like a normal-ish person. Okay, so I'm trying to type in O Block rapper. That died.
King Von.
King Von. That's exactly what I was thinking of. And King Von came up first, and apparently FBG Duck also died. Whatever. I don't know. Sorry to their families. I don't know. I'm sure they're watching about Southeastern Ohio Sports Authority.
Presented by Perfection One.
Yeah, Perfection One. Which hopefully, if you've been traveling on Thanksgiving,
we got a little bit of snow.
Yeah.
When I was in Tennessee, where there was no snow.
Yeah.
So.
Did you see the bear? You saw a bear, didn't you?
I did. Did you see that?
I saw like it was a big old bear. Wasn't
yeah,
it?
he was grubbing out of the trash can.
Nice.
Black bears, I thought, were usually like kind of like raggedy and like scraggly looking.
Oh,
This
that one
thing
apparently was just like it didn't
he
care.
wasn't skipping any meals. He was a big dog.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Did you see the otter that was on the golf course during? It was an LPGA event. It was just like I asked my mom. I was like, "Hey, so there's a golf event, and this animal just ran onto the golf course. What do you think it was?" I said, "I think it came out of water." She goes, "Oh, an alligator?" I go, "Nope, otter." I said,
I didn't know otters could run around on land.
"Yeah, apparently." I don't know. I just know they had arms.
Well, I
and
guess
legs.
that makes
But it went in the sand trap, but then it left the sand trap, and it didn't rake.
It
was rude.
I think I was thinking of like sea lions for some reason when you said otter.
Sea
There's
lions
like little
are so
sea
fat.
slugs or whatever.
You need to go to San Francisco to look at the sea lions. They're so big, and they just yell
What are
at
the
each
other
other.
things? Oh, manatees, like
Yeah.
the water elephants or whatever.
Yeah, and apparently Christopher Columbus might have mistaken manatees for mermaids. So put that together in your head of some of the stuff. But yeah, so manatees, you can't legally touch them.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Like they can come up and like hug you, and you can be like, "Sorry, dude, I can't reciprocate." They're just nice big dogs, but they're like such wusses that like they can't protect themselves.
Well, like if you touch them, they die.
No, but like that's why I don't really understand, because I don't think it's like they're that bad, but like they might.
They're softies.
They're soft. They're
All right.
softer
Well,
than
we've
Charmin.
had quite the I tried to get into it, and then
You did try to get into it. I wasn't letting it
music.
happen. I had to talk about
Started talking
King Von.
about old music,
Yeah.
rappers that aren't alive, and then manatees. So
Yeah.
we covered about all of it. All right, we're going to jump into the conference previews. It'll follow the same format as Tuesday. So we'll talk about the SVC, the FAC, all 3 of the SOC conferences, the OVC, and both of the SHAC conferences. So same format. We'll start with the Scioto Valley Conference. And similar to Tuesday, obviously we'll split the 8 up between the 2 of us. So you'll do 4, I'll do 4, and you'll start with the SVC, and I'll follow up with the FAC after.
So for last season's league champs, it was Uniota Shermans. They went 18-6, 13-1 in the SVC, and I believe they won like 13 straight games going into the tournament, something like that, or they won like 13 in a row to end the season, then lost by 1 to a really good Logan Elm team, which we would talk about. We'll talk about that later with the MSL TVC situation. We talked about it on Tuesday, but we'll talk about that more later. But for Unioto, they have a new coach for the first time since 2005. Some would say their second coach in 18 years or second coach in 2 years. Matt Combs takes over, former Vinton County coach, won several TVC and district championships at Vinton County. Is Uniota's all-time leading scorer as well. So he has a lot of history at Uniota. He replaces Matt Hoops, who will finish his, I believe he's done. Who knows? Like, I think it's almost like wrestling where, like, they might say they're retired, but they're just, like, never actually
And they
done.
make a return at the Royal Rumble, and then they're like, oh, well, actually, I'm staying.
Right. And Matt Hoops is not old at all. So, like, he's got plenty of time if he decides to do it again. But as of now, will finish his career as the number 3 in wins all time in the SVC behind Gary Kello and Larry Jordan, who recently.
Not bad company.
Yeah. But he's replaced by Matt Combs, who won a whole lot of games at Vinton County, did a great job there, and has been the athletic director for a couple years as well. So he kind of knows the lay of the land and whatnot. So it should be a pretty easy handoff as well. So with a lot of talent coming back, but they did graduate a good bit of talent. Zeke Schoblock, 14.8 points a game last year. Missed this really a lot of the back end of the season with an injury, which we talked about it before, but it was on when they played St. Trace. It didn't look like a whole lot. And then he never came back out. And then you find out what all happened. It was like, how did he even walk off the court? Because it was like a broken foot, like a torn different things. His foot. It was just like a random injury. I know your dad talked earlier about a former coach who tore his Achilles, just like stepping wrong off something. Like lower body injuries can happen at any time, and sadly for Zeke, it happened in that way. But it was an outstanding player for them.
It's like it's like a plane tier. Is that what it's called? Like the arch of your foot or whatever, or something like that.
He tore that. It was the plantar part. Yeah, and I have issues with that. But that's why I had that walking boot for a long time when I was coaching. Yeah,
I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, I have one. I've never had to use it. Knock on. Hopefully, I don't think that's real wood, but knock on wood that I haven't had to use it. But yeah, so they also lose Ashton Crace, Newton Hoops, Jordan Perkins, who averaged a little over 13 points a game. Good, solid role players for them. Crace actually had a really big game in their last win of the season against Sheridan. So I mean, they're losing a good bit, but also returning a lot as well. Blake Fitch, junior point guard, 12.8 points a game, 4.3 assists a game. He broke a long-standing SVC record for free throw percentage last season, shot nearly 90% at the line, had a game winner against St. Trace that ultimately proved to win the league for them. It would have been a split if not, but ultimately gave them the leg up in the league. They also returned Blake Hoops, senior, 9.1 points a game last year. Caden Cutright, another senior, 46% from 3. And then one that's kind of a wild card for Uniota is KB Perkins, their 6'5" senior center. He's 9.2 points, 9.3 rebounds a game. Hurt his knee during baseball season. He played in their last scrimmage, but he didn't play at the preview on Friday night. So is he going to be able to go if they have back-to-backs, or is it going to be kind of like they're just kind of slowly working him back in? So his health, to me, is going to be a big difference in seeing who's going to win this league this year, because if they don't have him, even though Dawson Mitchell is 6'6", maybe taller at this point, junior, inexperienced, even with really good length, and then David Long, who's I think 6'2", is probably their next big at that point. So rebounding will be a major issue if Perkins is unable to play often, which hopefully he will be able to. But he is in uniform, and I believe will be playing, but who knows at the same time. But they got some good young kids coming back that don't have a lot of experience, with like Isaac Coy, Jackson Zickafoos. I know there's a couple more. I mentioned David Long as well. So, they've got a lot of talent. So for Coach Combs, it's a pretty nice first year. He's also got his assistants back, that carried over from Coach Hoops. So there shouldn't be much turnover in that with Coach Easterday, who's one of the best in the area as well. I think you don't win the assistant coach of the year in the district multiple times very often. Usually it's like a one-time thing, but he's won it at least twice. So an outstanding assistant coach there as well. So I didn't have it until about 5 minutes before we started. I kind of decided my prediction for league champ is going to be Unioda. Like, I will talk about who I had predicted, but will probably be slightly changing on that. But my prediction for league champ is going to be Unioda. My previous projection was Zane Trace. They finished 13-10 last year, 11-3 in the SVC. They have a new coach, Tyler Cassidy, former coach at Circleville, replacing Gary Kello, who retires with the second most wins in SVC history. So 2 of the top 3 coaches in SVC history have retired over the past year, since last season. So second coach in 2 years, second coach in like 7 years, whatever you want to say, for Zane Trace. So new man at the helm there. But last season probably had the edge on the player of the year until he got injured late in the season, and then came back and still had a pretty solid end of the year. Landon Jarrell, senior point guard, 16.1 points a game, 3.5 assists a game last year. But the latest news, he's out for quite some time. So due to that, I'm going to bump them to second in my picks. They do play Unioda before the projected date for him coming back. It's going to be hard for them to score. Another one of their players that I was going to talk about also, Cohen Larson, is out for quite some time as well with a football injury. So with those two being out, it's going to take away, some scoring and some just overall athleticism off the court for them. But they're still going to have Landon Robinson solid all over the court. He'll probably run the point because he did it, as a sophomore for them. But he's an outstanding overall player. He can block shots. He can shoot from the outside. But he hasn't fully had to be the guy scoring wise. But I do think he can do it. Now, they also have some other solid players. Ezra Rippeth, Noah Houston, Gunnar McCullough, Grady Stewart. Grady Stewart, I don't think played a whole lot of varsity. We saw him in JV, and he looked really good last year. At times, he's going to be a junior, so he's going to step in with McCullough as juniors, Rippeth and Houston as seniors. So they're going to be a team that, if they can get some scoring while Gerald is out, that's going to make them so much better at the end of the year. Now, in their foundation game the other day, they lost 39-29 to Washington Courthouse, and they played well defensively, but it was just a big struggle offensively. So I think that's kind of where I flipped my decision on that. But I wouldn't be surprised if St. Trey still won it. But scoring's going to be a big thing for them. New coach, new system. I don't know how many assistants stuck around on that. So could be a slow start, but I think this is a very talented team that could make a run later in the season as well. So look for Zane Trace, even if they get off to a slow start, to have a nice season. Also, some other interesting teams, Westfall, Joe Ray, who was just absolutely, I think he ended up second in the league in scoring last year. Had to sit out the second half of the year due to transfer, but a really good player. Brian Craig was a freshman last year. He almost single-handedly beat St. Trace late in the season. Really good defensively. They're going to play a very, very, very fast tempo, and that's going to make some teams uncomfortable. If you can slow them down, that might make them uncomfortable, but they're very offensive-oriented, and Ray can really score it. He can get to the basket. He can find open guys. I had him one of the first times I saw him. He nearly had a triple-double as a freshman at Circleville. So, I mean, he's a really good player, really talented player as well. So, and then Southeastern, I think is going to be interesting. Lane Williams, Joey Pfeiffer, they've got some good size as well. Some good athletes there. They've slowly gotten better throughout the year 2 under Coach Alley. I think they're going to be an interesting one to watch for. Paint Valley, if Braylon Robertson is able to play, which I don't know if he is, is somebody that they could, with Carson Free, who I have as a sleeper for Player of the Year, which maybe less of a sleeper now, but But then Huntington's still coming along as a program. They lost an impact player in Isaac Kello. He left and went to RCCA, I believe was the last I had heard on that. And Adina and Piketon also lost some impact transfers as well. So it's a league that's been kind of impacted by people leaving, but at the same time, I think it's pretty well coached overall. So it should be an interesting year in the SVC. So my pick for player of the year, I'm going to go with Blake Fitch. I had Landon Jarrell or Blake Fitch, but I think Jarrell's going to miss probably too much time to win that. But Carson Free is one to look for as a sleeper. So injuries and other things can impact this season, but I think with what Fitch can do overall and kind of makes Unia to go, I think is going to be the difference maker there.
We'll talk about a couple of the, I think the only two of those Piketon transfers throughout the rest of the episode. One of them coming up here in the next segment.
And I'll mention Bo Henry from Piketon. Really good footwork. He's going to have to be the guy for him. So he could be a sleeper in that as well with Carson Free, because he's definitely, I think with his ability around the rim and to be able to step out, he's going to be someone that's going to put up some points. And I guess you could also throw Joe Ray in there, because if it's going to be
Joe
open,
Ray's a good call.
Yeah, if it's going to be open, you're going to look at guys that are going to have the ball and they're going to score. And Joe Ray is definitely going to score.
Westfall has won it 2 years in a row. Did Klein win it his senior year? I can't remember. I know he had a really good year. I can't remember off the top of my head if he won, but I'm not sure who else would have.
I don't think Klein did.
I could look it up. I was thinking it was Klein, because I was thinking Westfall went back-to-back years winning. Xander Ream.
Yep.
Xander Ream won it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I would assume Klein was probably second.
I bet he was, because that dude could play.
All right.
Westfall's had some ridiculous offensive players recently.
All right, we can move on to the Frontier Athletic Conference. I've heard a lot of people call it the FAC. I don't know. I don't like that. I like the SHAC.
I think the FAC ends up being way too open to mispronunciations accidentally, so we're not going to call it that, because
3 letters isn't that hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be like they call the SOC the SOC or
they
something.
They kind of go together. Like, it's not like, I don't know.
We got a vowel in the middle, which helps.
Like, that helps.
You couldn't say the Civica or, the Ovica or whatever. But,
yeah.
Either way, the FAC, the league champ last season in the FAC was Miami Trace. Finished it up 17-7, 9-1 in the FAC. I think they're the team that lost at the Horn to New Lexington over at Zane Trace, weren't they? It was like a crazy shot at the Horn. I think that was the sectional final, was that one? It was the sectional tournament, because obviously
it was the sectional final, because the districts were played at the Congo last year.
Right, and I think New Lex won the next game and moved on to the final.
They lost in overtime to Warren, and then Warren lost in overtime to Maysville, who got to the final, to the state final.
But last year for Miami Trace, like I said, 9-1 in the FAC. They split with Washington Courthouse. I didn't write it down, but Courthouse had another loss sprinkled in there. So
Hillsborough, right? I think.
Yes, I believe so. So Miami Trace did end up winning it outright despite the one loss. Now they're graduating quite a bit, right? Bryson Osborne, Colden May, Brady Armstrong, and Austin Bodecker, not to mention then sophomore, now junior, Grant Guest transfers to Kettering Alter.
That's such a... Well, and when I mentioned Maysville, who did they lose to? Kettering Alter. Right. So, pretty good. We hate to see talented kids leave. If you're going to go, and you get a good chance to go play for the state champs, like, I don't blame you. Right. I don't blame you at all for that. Like, we'd prefer you stay, but, it happens.
Now, coming back... for the Panthers, it's a lot of, in my opinion anyway, it's a lot of athletes that are that are dual or 3-sport athletes that are maybe more well known for their other sports, right? So, you talk about Trey Robinette and Julian Baker. Obviously, Robinette, quarterback for the Panthers the last at least 2 years. I'm not sure if it goes back 3 or not. And then Julian Baker, one of, if not the most talented underclassmen tailback in the coverage area. Sky Salyer's another guy that's coming back. And then Adam Guthrie, right? He's a junior. district second teamer as a sophomore last season, has received several Division I offers as an offensive lineman for football, but gets it done on the hardwood as well. And he's going to have to step it up this year, obviously, with Grant Guest moving on to Kettering Alter as one of the big interior guys for the Panthers. So it's a Miami Trace team that, whether it was graduation or through the transfer portal, lost a lot of talent, but they also have some pieces coming back as well. So, maybe they can round up the troops and, put together a solid season in a conference that I think this year is pretty wide open for the most part. Now, for this upcoming year, I think, and this is a conference that really every team has lost a pretty decent amount. And one of the teams that didn't was Jackson, right? So they go 16-8, 5-5 in the FAC last season behind They actually finished fourth, I believe, behind Miami Trace, Courthouse, and then Hillsboro. But Jackson graduates Boston Campbell. Now it's just one player, but he was an FAC first team selection. But they return a very good junior class for this upcoming season: Ryan Simons, Jax Carroll, Bodie Wolford, Charlie Woodard, and Steven Jenkins. Not to mention one of those transfers from Piketon, senior Garrett Legg moves in as well. I know I don't know his exact numbers from last year, but I know he had a triple-double in a game, which, that doesn't happen too much at the high school level. So if you were going to replace Boston Campbell, and obviously Campbell and Legg, I think two completely different play styles, but I think in terms of presence, I don't think you could ask for much more than Garrett Legg to get as a replacement, if you will. But Garrett Legg going to be a really good player for Jackson.
Well, they weren't big at all. So it's not like Garrett Legg's huge, but he's good size. And one of the big things that Jackson needed was a little bit of size, and he gives them size, experience, and versatility. Like you said, I had a triple-double in a game, so he can really make things happen. So I think that is a huge pickup for them.
And then, so obviously I'm going to go with Jackson. Now, I didn't originally have Jackson, right? I was kind of favoring Hillsboro for a moment until I realized just how much Jackson was bringing back, and in terms of numbers, how little they were letting go. But it's a team last year. Now, I tell you what, one of the more competitive home-and-home matchups last year was Jackson and Hillsboro. One of those games went to at least overtime. I think it was a 2-point game one time and maybe a 2-point game or 3-point game the other time. It was an extremely competitive series, but Hillsboro does end up 6-4, finishing third in the FAC, and they're in a similar boat to Jackson. They really didn't graduate anything. Now, what are they bringing back? Both of their FAC first teamers and Tate Davis averaged over 16 points per game, was voted the FAC Player of the Year as a junior. And they also bring back Jack Howland, who made the first team list in the FAC as a freshman. So it's not too often you see a rookie putting up numbers like Howland did. And when you look at the rest of the conference, right, you have a team in Washington Courthouse who more or less was just absolutely gutted at the top from graduation. Isaiah Haithcock, John Wall, Garrett Rickman, Gabe Taisei all graduate. And then you have a team in Chillicothe that, they really... They didn't have a great season last year, but they didn't graduate much. So you bring back junior guard Cooper Stone King. He was all FAC. He was a district third teamer in Division I. You also bring back Juan Miller, Cam Badger, Daniel Schism, Caden Cox. That's not even mentioning... obviously, in the fall sports, we talked a lot about their impressive freshman group on the football side of things. So, it's yet to see if, any of those guys, obviously Ligon, one of the more talked about freshmen in the area, are able to make an impact in their first season at Chillicothe. And then, McLean, they're 2 seasons removed from a district title. I think it's 3 seasons removed now.
3 now.
From a district title and a regional semifinal appearance. They go 5-18, winless, 0-10 in the FAC last season. So it's just kind of a work in progress.
I think they're on their
Greenfield.
4th coach in 6 years or 4 years, however you want to say it.
So Joe B was only there for a year, wasn't he?
I think it was 2 or 3. Yeah, so, he was with a really good class, which we'll talk about him later.
Who?
Joe B. Stewart.
Oh, will we?
Fayetteville.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I think with Hillsboro, I know they got they got an additional transfer in from East Clinton.
Okay.
I don't know the name offhand, but he's got good size, which is something they needed. So when I watched their scrimmage with Uniota, I thought they looked pretty good, at least on the offensive end. Tate Davis is awesome, which I know you're not even done talking, but with Hillsborough, I think them and Jackson are probably at the top. Maybe if Guest was there with Miami Trace, but Miami Trace is a well-coached team, so I mean, you never know. But I'm interested to see Chillicothe this year.
Yeah, I think Chillicothe could be a surprising.
Yeah, especially like I mentioned with a couple of those other teams, like the second half of the year when they fully when the freshmen have played enough minutes to almost be like sophomores and whatnot. So they're just going to get better as they get older as well.
So yeah, like you said, Jackson and Hillsborough at the top. I'm giving the edge to Jackson for now, and that'll probably be my official pick. But we'll see as the season goes on. We already talked about how competitive that Jackson and Hillsborough series was last year. Now, in terms of Player of the Year, I don't think I really needed to get cute with it. When a guy wins it as a junior, it's kind of hard not to pick him to repeat as a senior. So I'm going to go with Tate Davis, right? I'm just, you look throughout the conference, and I'm just not sure there's a ton there. I mean, maybe Adam Guthrie, we'll see what Garrett Legg does. Cooper Stone King, maybe, but I don't.
I think with Jackson, they're almost so balanced that it's going to be really hard for them to have someone win it.
But yeah, I'm going to go with Tate Davis as my Player of the Year. So as of now, we think Jackson's going to win the league. Tate Davis, in my opinion, the favorite to repeat, is Player of the Year in the FAC.
I will say, we decided we weren't really going to talk about divisions and whatnot, but Jackson, I believe, is 3. And if they're 3, that puts them with Warren, who lost one player from a regional runner-up last year. So that's going to be tough for them. But Hillsborough is in D4, which is unreal loaded. So it's going to be interesting to see the postseason. But yeah, those are at the top, especially. I think it's going to be really good. And really, even with McLean, they have some athletes over there, so they're not going to be just easily pushed around, and they're a very proud program. So I think every night's going to be a battle over there in the FAC.
All right, we can move on to the 3 SOC conferences. You can go ahead and kick it off with the SOC 1.
SOC 1, last year's champions, the Notre Dame Titans, went 16-7 overall, 10-0 in SOC 1 play, lost an absolute heartbreaker in the district semifinals to, I believe it was Sims Valley, might have been South Gaia, but either way, they lost in the last seconds there. And, they graduated.
Was that the night where the lines were jacked up?
Yeah, it was the night with the lines jacked up, yep.
So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
and it was D4.
The horrible lines. Yeah, it was the first night. Yeah, and it ended on the worst downer because I think it was Notre Dame needed 1 free throw and missed 2 in the last couple seconds. So yeah, it was a heartbreaker there for Notre Dame. So they had some issues in the off season. So Cody Metzler, SOC 1 Player of the Year last year, special mention All Ohio, graduated. But they also lost a couple other players to Portsmouth via transfer.
Really?
So, yeah. So, it's going to make Portsmouth a little bit better. Probably going to make Notre Dame a little bit worse. But returning still, they've still got some really nice players. Landon Barbaritis, I believe that's how you say it. But he's senior, first team All SOC 1 last year. Aaron Bradford, senior SOC 1 Defensive Player of the Year, which if you saw our last episode, we talked about how big of an honor that is to win that Defensive Player of the Year. And then also they returned Miles Phillips, who's a senior. It was second team All SOC 1 last year. So Notre Dame returns a lot, but they still lost their point guard, lost Metzler. They are going to have to fill in some holes for them because it's tough when you lose talented players. So based off of that, my prediction for league champion, which I saw someone picked this team to finish 3rd on Southeastern Ohio Preps, but I think they had a really funny pick. I'm trying to remember.
Boston or something.
No, it wasn't. It might have been New Boston second, but New Boston graduated their best 2 players. So I know they got a good player in, but yeah, I'm trying to remember. It was something
Green, maybe.
No. It was in SOC 2.
Oh. Oak Hill.
It wasn't
Oak Hill, Sims Valley, South Gallia, Northwest.
I don't know. I'm not going to say it until I see who you picked. Who'd you pick?
We're getting there.
Okay, so so I'll tell you later. But my prediction for league champion, the Flyers of Ironton St. Joseph, went 10-14 last year overall, but 7-3 in SOC1 play. They return a bevy of players, including Landon Rowe, who was first team All-SOC1 last year as a junior. He's a senior. Wesley Neal, another senior, was second team All-SOC1 last year. And then Eli Whaley, a sophomore, who was second team last year as a freshman. I think it's probably a 2-team race between the Titans and the Flyers, with Notre Dame having to replace some people that maybe they didn't expect to by transfer. That could impact things. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Notre Dame wins it. But for now, I'm going with the Ironton St. Joseph Flyers. My pick for player of the year, kind of a three-man race. Barbaras from Notre Dame, Landon Rowe from ISJ, but my leader would be Green's John Knapp, the sophomore, scored 17.2 points a game the junior scored 17.2 points a game as a sophomore. Inside out presence, really good shooter. For me, I think he'll have the slight edge because he's going to need to do a little more scoring for Green to have success. And he's definitely more than capable of doing it, but it's going to be a player that is one to watch for.
Yeah, potentially a chance for, I believe, John and
Abby.
Their brother and sister.
Yep.
So potentially a chance to reel in both the boys and girls Player of the Year awards.
And maybe probably the most talented players on each side. Like
that'd be a pretty cool.
I know the parents are the coaching staff for the girls program, but they did a really good job with John too because he can really shoot it. Like I saw him as a freshman really fill it up in a district semi game over a Paint Valley team that had way more depth than them, but he just lit it up, and I was really impressed.
That'd be a cool feature video, maybe just a write up, one of the two. Either way,
Right.
Brother and sister both winning Player of the Year. That's not too off. It not only it's more so that opportunity doesn't come around that often to where a brother and a sister, like seriously, the only other time I can think of it is when like the Overleys were playing. Mm-hmm. I could not name another brother and sister that were playing at the same time. Anyway. That's all for the SOC 1. We'll move on to the SOC 2. Last season, a historic year down in McDermott as the Northwest Mohawks go 23-4, 9-1 in the SOC 2, winning their first ever boys district title in program history. I think they only lost by 4 to Malvern in the regional semi. Malvern, one of the better logos in the coverage here. It's like a green bee, and he's like flexing on them. Yep. Now, it could be a rough year for the Mohawks, I'll admit. They lost all of their starting 5 from last year. So you graduate Player of the Year, Co-Player of the Year, and Co-Player of the Year Connor Lentz and Tanner Bolin, Defensive Player of the Year Jake Jenkins, and you also lose Caleb Lewis as well. All 4 to graduation, and then junior Logan Wolfenbarker transfers to Portsmouth West. Now,
that was the killer.
Coming back for the Mohawks, you kind of have to dig around a little bit. So you presume Ivan Ely will come back for his sophomore year. He was kind of the designated 6th man who, really the only guy that ever came out was Wolfenbarker. It was kind of a straight switch. Now, and we mentioned it off air, Brendan Weiss, a 6'3 senior, we talked a little bit about it during the football season. He did have an injury that kept him out a little bit of the football season. Not sure if he's back for basketball or not. If he is, obviously that adds some size for the Mohawks and a guy with varsity experience, which is more than they have right now, considering they really only played with 6 guys last year. So we'll wait and see if he's able to come around for basketball. A guy I wanted to talk about was Aiden Armbruster, and it's a name that you maybe don't hear a lot about because he didn't play any varsity last year, but...
And he was a lineman.
Right. A lineman in football. I think he was the right tackle, if I remember correctly. Either way, his sophomore now, we saw them 3 times in the regular season, I believe, and in all 3 of those JV games, he looked really good. And it's a guy that provides all kinds of size, but also very athletic, can move around. I think he handled the ball a lot in those JV games. And then with a team as depleted as Northwest seemingly is heading into this season, I think Armbrister's a guy to keep your eye out for. I mean, you can't teach size, right? You obviously, he'll need to get some varsity playing experience, but at the same time, with just the presence he brings, it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to average upwards of, double-digit points in his first year, just based on the size advantage he has. So look out for Aiden Armbrister for the Mohawks, but I think for Northwest, and it's hard to uphold the standard that they were able to raised to last year, but probably going to be a down year in comparison to last year, right? When you graduate that much, you kind of need a year to regroup, and with the younger class, especially with Ely and Armbrister and presumably a lot of other guys that are going to have to come up from these younger classes, we'll see if they're able to build up to maybe get back to the point that they were at last year, when I think they more or less shocked the coverage year. I mean, I think you had them losing in the sectional final to Adina, and I had them losing to Portsmouth in the district semi. So it was a team that really came together come the tournament after a loss and it was their only loss in the conference to Eastern at home right before the tournament. And they just rallied together and got it done in the postseason. Once again, their first district title in school history, but I think they've got some rebuilding to do this year. But it also could just be, instead of a rebuild, we could see a reload season for the Mohawks. Now, when you look at the rest of the SOC2, there's a couple teams that you can look at. Obviously, Eastern comes to mind as the outright second-place team last year. They were the only team, as I mentioned, to beat Northwest in the regular season. But at the same time, the Eagles graduated quite a bit as well. Jace White, Tegan Warner, TJ Richards. They also, they'll be bringing back Tucker Leist. And, maybe Brewer Tomlinson if he decides to play. Obviously didn't finish out last season, but in the game we saw him against Piketon, looked really good for them, was a dominant force on the inside, but once again didn't finish the season, so I'm not sure if we'll see him back. Obviously, if he was back, that'd be a huge boost for their stock in the SOC2. And when I mentioned that second transfer from Piketon, Declan Davis, down into Beaver, now playing for the Eastern Eagles, kind of adds that 3-and-D guy. And not only that, kind of similar to Brendan Weiss moving to Northwest, adds another player that had some varsity playing experience, something that maybe the Eagles are lacking a little bit now, graduating White, Warner, and Richards last season. Now, there are a couple other teams that were really the only team right now in the SOC2 that I think may be a year or two out is Oak Hill. Maybe South Gallia now. I'll get to them. I'll go ahead and talk about South Gallia. They're 5-5 in the conference last season. I think one of the more underrated teams in the area. They're bringing back Tanner Richards, who was an SOC2, Tanner Sanders, who was an SOC2 second teamer last year. But they're graduating their top 3 scorers, all of which averaged double-digit points per game, and Gabe Frazee, Bryson Stanley, and Tanner Booth. So I think for South Gallia, unless they've got a really strong underclassmen group, this might be a bit of a rebuilding year for them. Now, I will talk about Sims Valley. They go 13-11 last year, 5-5 in the SOC. They do graduate 2 of their top 4 scorers, but they do bring back 2 first-team All-SOC2 selections. One in Ethan Smith, a senior that averaged 15.5 points per game last year. I think he's a front-runner for Player of the Year in the conference, as well as Will Jones, another senior, 8 points and 6 rebounds per game. I think this is a Sims Valley team that, similar to Eastern, should be able to contend towards the top of the conference. Now, this brings me to my pick, and process by elimination. If you've got there by now, you can realize who I'm picking. It's going to be Western, right? This is a team that went 6-17 last season, 3-7 in the SOC2. The only player they graduated was Logan Lytle. He was their third leading scorer, 6.5 points per game. Coming back, everybody else. Drew Haggy, Cam Janes, Foster Davis, Alex Sullivan, Cutter Clay, all back. Drew Haggy averaged 19 points, 6 rebounds per game. Cam Janes, 17.5 points, 9 rebounds per game. when you look at the numbers that these guys averaged, I'm shocked that they only won 6 games last year, because you just think this is a team that, when you have 2 guys, presumably the best 2 players in the conference coming back this year are all in Latham and Drew Hagge and Cam Janes. I think Ethan Smith with Sims Valley is another great player as well. But I think, and I believe it was 3 years ago that they went to the Elite Eight Western.
Yeah, because Hagge and James are freshmen.
Yeah, I think they get back to the top of their league this year. I think they finally put it together. I think in the SOC too, it's kind of a year of, not attrition, but a year of who's not losing the most. And Western by far lost the least, and they're bringing back the most. And Hagge, Janes, Davis, Sullivan, Cutter, Clay, a player of the year, Drew Hagge, Cam Janes, take your pick. I think it's going to be one of them. As I said, I think for Sims Valley, Ethan Smith is a very valid choice as well. I know they only won 6 games last year. I think Sims Valley is a fair choice to win the conference as well. I just have a hard time. I guess I would have to see them in person to get an idea of what they look like as a team, because it's not all about the individual stats. It's how you play as a team, and I think just by looking at their stats and looking at the record, that's something that Western maybe didn't do very well last year. But I think this is the year they get it done.
Well, I saw them over at Fairfield, who was undefeated for a long time, and they were still undefeated at the time, and Western pushed them late in that game. I think it ended up being a 6-point game, but with 2 minutes left, it was tied, and it was almost like at times they invented ways to lose, because then they lose to a Paint Valley team that was not very good last year. It was just random losses, but I just think they have too much talent. They're well coached. I watched that game, they were in the midst of a long losing streak that time, and I'm sitting on the baseline, and Coach Williams and his staff are just coaching them up like crazy. You can tell that there was still the right energy. It just they weren't getting over the top, and sometimes when you start losing, it's hard to get out of that hole. It's almost like quicksand, where you just you just keep, the harder you fight, the deeper you sink in. The best thing for Western was to get to the off season and kind of regroup and try to come back with a lot of the same pieces, but man, they're really talented.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I think the favorite to win the league, honestly, Sims Valley. If I had to pick the safest choice, that's probably who I would go with, but that's boring. I'm going to go with Western. Like I said, I think they're bringing back the best 2 players in the league, and I don't know how to make this sound not rude, but I feel like you almost have to find a way to not win the league when you have the 2 best players on the team. And sometimes maybe players just don't gel together, and that's just kind of how it is. But I think Janes and Hagge are one of the best duos in the area, not just the conference. I think that's one of the best duos in our coverage area. So I think they get it done this year. So.
Well, I don't really disagree. So I appreciate your rundown, and I will give you a rundown on my own. This one on the SOC3.
There we go.
Last season's league champions, the Wheelersburg Pirates, 20-5. 9-1 in the SOC2. Just kidding. The SOC3. They're also the district runner-ups, where Northwest really put it on them out at the Convo, but they were they were heavy favorites and ended up
1 seed.
Yeah, did not play very well over at the Convo in really either game, but they were able to get to the district final, where they just fell short to that really hot Northwest team. So graduating, Devin Lattimore, first team all SOC3 a season ago, 20.5 points a game. He was also an All-Ohioan at some level. I don't remember. I didn't type it for some reason. I looked it up, just didn't add it. Luke Swords was second team all SOC3, but then they return a whole lot more, which Braylon Rucker, a junior, 12 points per game, was first team all SOC3. So was Landon McGraw, another junior. And these two can really, they can really fill it up when they need to. They can do a lot of different things to help the team win. They're going to be asked to score a little bit more this year, so we'll see if they can step it up.
Did Bivens graduate?
Bivens is still there.
Bivens is still
Yep.
there. Okay,
And then Xander Mowry is also still there.
Okay.
Senior, second team all SOC 3. So him and Hunter Bivens as well. So they've got some talented kids. They had a nice JV team, some nice talent there. So, for Wheelersburg, they're going to have to find a way to replace that, 25 points more per game for Lattimore and Swords combined. So, if they can do that, they're going to have a chance to compete a lot of nights. But for now, I've got, looking at this year's league, for prediction for league champs, I got a couple teams that I'm going to talk about. First, the Minford Falcons, 19-5 last year, district runner up again. They went 8-2 in the league, dropped a couple games late that ended up ultimately costing them the league title. Actually, they may have went 7-3.
Did they lose 3-2? I think they lost both to Wheelersburg.
Lost
and
both to
split
Wheelersburg.
with Webster.
Yeah, and split with Webster. Yes, I don't know why I had 8-2, but yeah, 7-3. But they've got one of the best players in Minford history. Will be breaking their school record very early in the season.
8 points away is what I saw.
I think it was like 8, yeah, with Miles Montgomery. Third team All-Ohio last year, 21.7 points per game as a junior. These guys are seniors that are coming back. Bennett Kaiser, special mention All-Ohio, 19.1 points per game. And then you also Jackson Shoemaker, who's just been a big-time, contributor for them inside out. Really good shooter, really good defender on the interior, gives them some really good size. But the big question is, where else do they get production? So Troy Rhodes graduated. He came up with some big plays from time to time for them.
Jeff Pika
Jeff
as well.
Pika, yeah, Jeff Pika is the other one. So they've got some talented kids, talented athletes coming back. A lot of those kids were soccer players that went to the state finals in soccer. How much is that going to knock them behind? How much lingering injuries you may have coming on, because you're not going to not play
Right.
when you get to that level. But their JV team wasn't great from what we saw before games last year. So, where is the other production going to come from for Minford? So,
Does Cottle play basketball?
I think he did as a freshman, but I don't think he did last year. But maybe if he did, but he's going to be the best athlete on the floor if he does.
Yeah.
So it sounded like maybe he was going to, but I don't know for
I feel
sure.
like he'd be a similar guy to like Cody Hessler of like North Adams last year. Where, like he's not really going to score a lot, but like at the same time he's going to run up and down the floor and just guard everybody.
And you're going to hate playing him.
Yeah.
So they've got guys. An Ashton Reeder, who I know is coming back. Ethan Cordell was hurt for a good bit of last year, but he played a little bit from time to time. I think Gavin Downey played a little bit from time to time. So they had some guys that filled in. Kay Glockner.
Yep.
Kay Glockner was their sixth man last year. So he's going to step into the lineup, I would guess. So, I mean, you've got some really good athletes. You got some kids that know how to win. You just got to, find new roles for these guys. And, I think Coach Shoemaker and his staff does a really good job. So, for me, they're one of the top 2 teams coming back. They're in Division 5, which the only issue with that is Harvest Prep and Lutheran East are both in Division 5. But you know what? Didn't really expect it in soccer. And you get there. So, I mean, it's they've got a chance to make a big tournament run as well. But the good thing is, out of the 2 of the 3 district winners in the Southeast will play the 2 winners from the East to get to the state or to the Final Four. So they don't have to worry about going through Harvest Prep. So that's a positive there. Now, for my other team, it would be the regional runner-ups from last year, the South Webster Jeeps, who went 23-4 and 8-2 overall. They're heavy favorites in Division 7. Division 7, they should have a good chance to get to the Final Four.
South Webster beat Wheelersburg last year. Did they split?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
I did not remember that at all.
Yeah, so Eli Roberts is back, 23 points a game, first team All-Ohio last year, also 8.1 rebounds, 6'7", can kind of do it all. I mean, when they played Berlin Highland in the regional final, he was inside almost the entire game, and then kind of at the end of the game, instead of post him up, they had him take a 3. to try to win it, and they end up losing in overtime. So, I mean, I think if they can keep him inside with the occasional step out, I think that's where he's really dangerous. Now, if he's going to go play at the next level, 6'7", and being able to go inside out is going to be huge for him. So I can see why they still want to get him outside some, because that's just going to help his development to play in college as well. So, for me, the big thing for them is who else scores.
Yep, 100%.
Dylan Schubert, a senior, averaged 6 points a game last year. Owen Malt, also a senior, 3.9 points a game. Hunter Bernard, a junior, 2.7 points a game. And Christian White, a senior, about 2 points a game, but 4.3 assists a game as well. So who's going to score consistently to open the floor? Schubert, more of a slasher. Malt can shoot it. Christian White did not shoot well at all to start the season, but then it hit some big shots late in the year. So I think if he shoots with more confidence and consistency, he can. Hunter Bernard, I thought, was a shooter and only shot 2 threes on the season, so he's more of a slasher. But I think he can probably shoot a little bit.
Watch him in some JV games.
Yeah,
take over.
Man, their JV team was loaded last year. So you got a couple kids in like Bo Stevens, Bryson McClintock that are going to be coming up and playing more minutes. Can they help space the floor for when Roberts needs to go inside? I watched them scrimmage the other day where they didn't score very much, but they played good defense and didn't give up a lot of points. So, I mean, it was like in the 2 quarters they played that I really actually watched, it was like 17-16. So, I mean, they're going to be able to guard. I mean, Schubert, Malt, Bernard, White are really good defenders. And then you do that along with a 6'7" Roberts, who's very athletic, and it's going to be hard to score on them if they're locked in each night. It's just, to me, scoring. Scoring is going to be a big thing for them to take another further step, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see 2 SOC 3 teams in the Final Four. Ultimately, because I haven't even picked, I'm gonna go Medford.
Okay,
that's
I probably would too.
Yeah, I hadn't picked, but I do think Southwestern might have the better chance to win a state championship.
Yep, agreed.
Which, I mean, I think you would trade a state championship for a league title. So
what division's Northwest in? 5?
Northwest?
Yeah,
I think 5. They could
That's
be 6.
crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean,
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of wild with what all these new divisions and whatnot. So my prediction on Player of the Year, it's a 3-horse race. It's between Eli Roberts, Miles Montgomery, Bennett Kaiser. I think those 3 are head and shoulders above the rest. And I do think, Waverly's going to continue to get better throughout the year. They're still very young. They finished in 6th last year. I don't see them finishing there this year. I think they're just going to keep getting better and better throughout the year.
A lot of young guys.
Yeah, the Myers
really
twins.
Young guys.
The they have a freshman point guard that's going to be really good. They are
the what's his Alexander?
Yeah, Alexander. Yeah.
Cade Alexander. Cage.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, they've got a lot of talent. I think they're a team you don't really want to see the second half of the year, which ironically is when most of their league games are played.
Yeah, I know. They wait a little, usually after the new year.
Yeah. So the second half of the year is going to be really dangerous playing Waverly. So they're, to me, a team to watch. West's got a good transfer in Wolfenbarker.
Talk about him.
A really good shooter there, and I know West was kind of coming along throughout last year as well. And Valley is. Right. To me, is an interesting team. I mean, they play Piketon coming up this weekend. That could be an interesting game to just kind of see where both teams are at. But I think this Valley team, you lose Jace Copley, you lose Brennan Weiss, but you return everyone else that contributed all. We've watched those kids kind of coming
Bender, wasn't he pretty solid in the JV games a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so I mean...
I forget which one. I think it was Jackson or Jalen. I'm not sure which one it was.
It's the kicker.
Jalen.
Yeah. So, and then the other one is sophomore this year. So, I mean, they've got some talent. I don't know if they have really maybe one senior, but for the most part, it's a lot of juniors. So they're a team to watch for as well. I think this is a really good league. From really top to bottom.
You can't take any nights off.
You can't take nights off.
Yeah. That's what made Valley dangerous last year, where it's like Yeah, they're probably a bottom-ish team in the conference, but they have the player of the year. So,
Right.
You can't. I've said it 100 times. I'll say it one more. Anytime you have the best player on the court, you got a chance to win, and that was kind of the case with Valley last year.
Yep, 100% agree. So yeah, I think SOC 3 is going to be dynamic to watch on every night this year.
All right, we can go ahead and move on to probably the most clustered conference of last season. It was really hard to keep track of just because everybody beat each other. It's the Ohio Valley Conference. Guess what? Chesapeake, or some people call it the Peak, won the conference with 3 losses outright also, by the way, so they did not tie.
Oh, that was a wild league, wasn't it?
16-6 overall, 11-3, and they won the league, and they were the first. I shouldn't say the first, but they were the first out of like the top 5 teams in the Division III tournament out of the OVC to lose in the postseason. So they go 11-3 in the Ohio Valley Conference. Now they did end up losing in the sectional final down at Jackson to Ironton after splitting with the Fighting Tigers in the regular season. For Chesapeake, you graduate Danny Maynard, who was a first-teamer in the OVC last season, along with Braxton Oldecker. Now, you do return a little bit. Philip Thacker, also Caden Perkins, who was a first-team All-OVC selection. He's back for his junior year, as well as one of the more impressive freshmen from a season ago, Maddox Casey, now back for his sophomore year. I'll be honest, I didn't have him listed, but look for him in like the Player of the Year conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be probably a top 3 or 4 would be a safe range in the conference, and he's just a sophomore, and we're already talking about him like that. I think this will be another good Chesapeake team. Now, where do they stack up in the rest of the league? I'm not quite sure yet, but I think going into last year, not a lot of people would have picked Chesapeake to win the league. I think a lot of people would have said, Ironton, Portsmouth, Fairland, those kinds of teams. But I think this should be a very good, well-rounded Chesapeake team this season. Now, a prediction for this year's champ, man, I tell you, it's going to be, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very similar to last year, minus, I would say, South Point. I think South Point's going to be a little bit down. 14-10, 9-5. I believe there were 3 9-5 OVC teams last year. They lose to Wheelersburg. And funny enough, so you had 5 main teams, Chesapeake, Ironton, South Point, Fairland, and Portsmouth, go to the tournament. Ironton beat Chesapeake in the sectional final, and then the other 4 OVC teams all lost in the district semi. We could have had a district final round just completely filled of OVC teams, which would have been pretty cool. But none of them ended up making it. Yeah, we got none instead. But for South Point, they graduate a lot at the top. Caleb Lovely, 2-time OVC Player of the Year, along with Carter Smith, Elijah Wilburn, Josh Childers, Zathan Haney. They all graduate. Braden Hanshaw is back. Devon Lewis looked good in the JV game. We saw them in Portsmouth last year in Portsmouth. I think he's a name that kind of similar to Armbrister for Northwest. You may not be hearing a lot of, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of as the focal point in this South Point offense, presumably alongside Braden Hanshaw. Ethan Hunt, another name, or not Ethan Hunt, or maybe it was Ethan Hunt, another name to keep in mind. I know he was the backup quarterback last year. I know he was on the roster.
I think that was it.
Big guy, big frame. Maybe expect to see him in the fold as well. But I think this is going to be a team that's down a little bit from last year's standard as well. And that kind of leaves you with 3 teams, Ironton, Fairland, and Portsmouth. I think and we'll talk about Portsmouth. I think they're in a similar boat to South Point, right? So you graduate 4 of your top 5 scorers. You have a brand new coach. The players, DeAndre Berry, Donovan Breach, those 2 combined for 37 points per game. Isaiah Lewis, Noah Livingston both graduate. In terms of returning personnel, you have Malachi Loper in his second season in Portsmouth. Now, his senior year, I know he's a little less than 100 points away from 1,000, averaged 10.5 last year. He returns as the leading scorer.
The good thing is, from his time at Clay, he has experience with being the guy to score. So, I mean, he's going to probably have to go back into that mold, but yeah. And
then if he plays, and I say that just because when you get towards the bottom of the roster, it's hard to tell if guys are they're going to continue to play. Luke Stein, the next leading scorer with 2 points per game. Now, obviously, we I don't think we mentioned it when talking about Wheelersburg, but Logan Atkins transfers in to Portsmouth. Not sure if he's going to be.
I think he's hurt though, but I don't know if he's going to be able to be.
That's what I was going to say. I'm not sure if he would be back for any part of the season, but we think he might miss the first part of this season. So I think that obviously you were kind of looking forward to having him. Atkins, obviously, a supporting piece in that Wheelersburg team that won 20 games last year and made it to the district final. And then you mentioned earlier on some transfers out of Notre Dame. I'm not sure if you had any specific names or not, but some transfers in from Notre Dame going to Portsmouth. Obviously, as we mentioned, it's a Portsmouth team that fairly depleted. And Portsmouth was one of the more volatile teams last year. I think at home, South Point beat them by 40, and then a week later, Portsmouth went down to South Point and beat the Pointers by 10. I mean, it's just crazy stuff.
It was wild and kind of all over the place. It was really fun to talk about last year on here. But, yeah, it was a...
And not to mention DeAndre Berry was... in my time at SOSA, DeAndre Berry might be my favorite player to watch. I mean, that dude, you just never knew what was going to happen, right? I mean, we saw him throw stuff behind the back, step back threes from 30 feet out, just reverse layups. I mean, you name it.
Did you see him pitch?
No.
He was a really good competitor pitching wise too. So, but yeah, so I'm going to look this up real quick.
Some of the names for Notre Dame that you mentioned maybe making the short trip over to Portsmouth to help out the Trojans this year. And really, other than Portsmouth, that really leaves Ironton and Fairland, right? And I'll talk about both of those while you, I'm not sure how far away you are from.
I had a thing, but,
that's fine.
No, I'm going to fight you.
But nonetheless, it's a Portsmouth team that lost a lot of the top, like I said, 4 of their top 5 scorers. And Barry Breach, Isaiah Lewis, and Noah Livingston. Malachi Loper presumably going to be the guy in P-Town this season. So look for him when assessing the Trojans here early on in the 2024 season. Any luck?
It was on Litter Media. Shout out our guys over there. Oh, here it is. Okay, hold your horse.
I gave you about 3 minutes, so.
Huh?
So I gave you about 3 minutes. I wasn't sure.
Connie Thomas, point guard.
Okay.
Yeah, he was first team All SOC 1 last year.
Okay.
So I mean, he can really play. So he's the big one. That's going to really help Portsmouth out. But yeah, they didn't get their coach until very late in the fall, so they pretty much lost their summer. I mean, I know that this same coach, Coach Smith, was able to be with them throughout the summer, but I think they were running probably somebody else's offensive stuff. Right. So who knows? So it could be a slow start for them, but I think they're an interesting team for sure.
Now, that leaves 2 final teams I want to talk about, Ironton and Fairland. Right, we can start with Ironton. So they go 17-8, 10-4, lost to North Adams, who ended up winning the district in the district semi. You graduate Bailey Thacker. He had 9 points per game. He was the 3rd leading scorer on the team for the Fighting Tigers. Now, they brought back a fair amount, right? So Braden Schreck back for his senior year, 19 points per game. Ashton Lane, I felt like, came on pretty strong for a freshman basketball player at the varsity level. 9 points per game, 7 rebounds per game. The problem for Ironton, and we mentioned it on Tuesday's episode, they're in the state Final Four. And this is a basketball team that is built with a lot of football players. So who's actually going to play? Will there be a delay for the Tigers with the idea of how long will it take them to play to the best of their ability, right? And one of the big names is Sean Terry. 14 points per game last year, back for his senior year. Is he going to play? Is he going to early enroll at Missouri? I think is where he ended up.
Missouri.
Deciding to go to. We don't know. I think if Sean Terry plays, this is what I'll say. If Sean Terry plays, I think Ironton should probably win the OVC this year. But that's not a for sure thing. And like I said, a lot of these basketball players, a lot of their top guys are also football players. So depending on how far, that they're guaranteed this week, and maybe is there a gap week or is it just back to back for the state tournament? I can't remember.
It's back to back.
Is it back to back?
Yeah.
Okay, but it's like it's not Friday. It's like Saturday morning.
So it could be Thursday, Friday, or Saturday.
Okay.
I don't know if they've posted when it would be yet. So,
but yeah, for Ironton, on paper, bringing back a lot.
Okay, so they have the Ironton Classic, which is like, it's like December 20th or 21st, something like that. I would guess that's the first time they're going to play.
Yeah.
I would guess that they're just going to take, because you got to have a little bit of time to recover anyway, because it's not like football is an easy sport.
Right.
But the last I heard was Terry is not going to play. I think he's early enrolling, but we'll see.
Okay. So it's not, and obviously you're not going to have, if that's the case, you're not going to have Sean Terry the entire year. And even if you take 2 or 3 weeks off, a lot of these guys are still going to be beat up, wore out. It may take maybe after Christmas break and into the new year for them to start to get into the rhythm on the football side. Now that leaves one team, Fairland, 16-9, one of those 9-5 OVC teams last year, losing in the district final to losing in the district semi to Minford. They graduate Chase Allen, Will Davis, and Noah Markham. I believe Chase Allen, I know he was over 1,000. He wasn't their all-time leading scorer, I don't believe so. But he did crack the millennium mark in terms of points. Now, they are bringing back Brody Buchanan and Keegan Smith. Those are two big-time players for them. Brody Buchanan, I believe, just committed to Rio Grande the other day. Definitely going to be a top player in our area. I think he is one of those front-runner guys for Player of the Year as well. But it's going to be a lot of new faces in Proctorville, which is another reason why I think this league is wide open. So, I know I said
you
I'm not...
haven't sold me on anybody.
I know I haven't, and I'll be honest with you.
You haven't sold yourself on anybody either.
I haven't. Right now, I mean, it's kind of hard not to pick... Man, I don't know. I mean, I think South Point obviously is out of contention. I think it's more so between Portsmouth, Fairland, Ironton, and Chesapeake, and I think it's just a toss-up there. I mean, I kind of want to say the other three might, and I've never seen Connie Thomas play, so I don't know how well. I don't know how well his game in the SOC 1 is going to transfer to the OVC. It's a completely different conference. It's a lot bigger of a conference.
Well,
I'm just going to throw a dart.
Well, this is what I'll say. Malachi Loper went from averaging like 20 a game to 10.5.
Right.
Now, he wasn't the number one option anymore, but it was a big difference between SSC 1 and the OVC, which some people don't think the OVC is that good, but those people are crazy because this league it's loaded.
Is Nathan Speed still at Fairland?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm picking the Dragons to win the I'm picking the Dragons in the OVC this year. I think I didn't check. I guess I should have. I'm not sure how soon the OVC starts their league play. But if they're playing league games in the month of December, and Ironton is playing Fairland and Portsmouth and Chesapeake in some of those early matches, I think they could get hurt by that. And I think Fairland probably has the edge with Buchanan alone over Portsmouth, as well as Chesapeake. I'm going to go with Fairland, and I don't feel great about it, and that's not saying anything about Fairland. That's just saying, how competitive this league is from the top to the middle part. And obviously there are some other teams as well. We'll see about Rock Hill, Gallia, and Colegrove. Now, that does take me to my Player of the Year prediction. I think it's going to be Owen Johnson for Colegrove. Averaged 23.5 points per game last season. I think the Player of the Year race is most likely going to be a two-man race between Johnson and Buchanan. I think Bailey Thacker and Maddox Casey could make cases as well. But anytime you average 23.5 points per game, you're probably going to be the favorite next season as well. So I think Owen Johnson for Colegrove. If you were a betting guy, I'd say to put some money on Owen Johnson to win OVC Player of the Year. But, you were talking about how good the SOC 3 was. I think the OVC, we talked about how clustered it was last year. I think we're in for another year of it this upcoming season.
I got a name for you from Gaia Cade Mock, 6'7" senior.
Transfer?
No. He's been there. He's just been kind of, because they had
Lost in the shuffle.
just kind of lost in the shuffle. But good inside out game, really good athlete, and I don't know how good Gaia Academy is going to be, but I think Mock's going to be somebody that's going to put up a bunch of points too. So
what was the name of the kid they had a few years ago?
Is it Clary?
Massive. Yeah. Gosh, that was a big. Where'd he go? Marshall
or West Virginia, one of the two.
He was big dog. We went down there and watched him play courthouse. I was like, gosh, this kid's huge.
Yeah. Looks like Marshall.
Yeah, but the OVC.
There's some weird things when you type in Clary on there. So, but Isaac Clary Marshall is one of the options. So
nice. But yeah, the OVC. I didn't really. I'm still not sold. But I think Fairland is it's my choice for now. We'll see how it plays out. Peak. That would be my second choice. I think I'd go Fairland, Chesapeake, Ironton as my top three.
But I wouldn't be surprised if you've got the cluster at the top again, like you did last year with the 3 losses, 4 losses, 5 losses.
You had Chesapeake at 11-3, Ironton and Portsmouth at 10-4, and South Point and Fairland at 9-5. And then you had Colegrove, Rock Hill, and everybody was just kind of beating on each other. But then everybody beat those bottom 3. I think Gallia may have beat Portsmouth. Rock Hill, Gallia, or Colegrove, I think, beat Portsmouth, and that's kind of what dropped them down underneath Chesapeake. I'd have to look it up really fast, but that's all I got for the OVC. It's bound and determined to make it a tough conference to kind of assess and pick an outright winner, but we'll see. Season's not too far away.
Yeah, I completely agree. So my first is we're going to be SHAC.
Shaction time.
Yeah, Shaction time, the Southern Hills Athletic Conference, which when I was in school was the Southern Hills League. I don't really know why they rebranded.
The Shul.
Yeah, maybe because Shac's a lot easier to say than the SHL is. But the SHAC, with the best website in the Southeast District for any league, shout out to SHACathletics.com, which is better than SVC Sports Talk. .weebly.com, but make sure you check it out for all your SVC updates.
Yeah,
so
they lost to Gallia. Portsmouth did last year. I was thinking it was one of those teams.
Yeah, so last season the SOC1 was ran by North Adams. Went 13-0, 21-5 overall. They once again repeated as district champions, beating Minford in the district final for the second straight year after losing to them in the regular season.
By double digits.
Yes, so they were very impressive. But you also lost second team All-Ohio Branson Copus, 17.2 points a game. It was the all-time leading scorer for North Adams, beating out his father to become the all-time leading scorer, who his father also retired, resigned. I don't know which, but they have a new coach in Austin McCormick, who's a longtime assistant. Maybe not long time because he's not very old, but been an assistant there for a while. So, he's going to step in. So it's a little consistency there with the program. So they're probably going to play a similar style. Also graduated Cody Hessler, who was one of those defensive guys that didn't score a whole lot, but you did not want guarding you. He averaged 3.6 points a game. So they're graduating almost 21 points a game. But man, they've got some dudes coming back. Brees and Swikert, 12 points a game last year. These are all seniors, just so you know, all seniors. 12 points a game, 7 rebounds a game. I think that he's listed at 5'10". I don't know about that, but he plays like he's like 6'4", can shoot it. Is just one of those really, really tough, hard-nosed kids. They get Jace Rothwell, who, like, when I saw that he only averaged 11.4 points a game, kind of threw me off because I swear every time we saw him, he went just ballistic. Remember
against Fairfield in Leesburg, I think he had a 20-point game. I think he led them in scoring that night.
I'm going to look that up just to get, because he also, I think, had like a ridiculous shooting night.
Well, because that was a big game. I believe that may have been Fairfield's first loss.
Was Fairfield's first loss.
So that was a big game.
Yeah, Rothwell in that game was 8 of 11 from the field, 10 of 10 from the line.
Yeah.
He had 26 points and 4 steals in a 59-50 win over Fairfield. But yeah, like he'd have some.
I think Copus only had like 6 maybe that night.
Who'd you say?
Copus. I don't think he had
He had
a
8.
ton. 8, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
he only shot 4 times.
right.
I
So
mean,
it was obviously a game plan for Fairfield to take him out. They just forgot. Oh, this is actually. I think a lot of people, including myself, sometimes looked at this North Adams team and just thought, "Oh, it's all Branson Coat." Like, no, this is a pretty filled out team, and I think you're going to get a look at that this year with some of these other guys having to step up into bigger roles.
so just like here's just kind of a snapshot of their season last year. They lost in overtime to Fairland to start the season.
Yep.
And they got a couple of wins. Then they lost in overtime to Bishop Hartley,
Yep.
which was a very good team. Then they lost to Minford by 18 when they played miserable that game. Then they won 2, 4, 6, 7 straight before losing to South Webster, which I'm not 100% sure it was in overtime. So they lost 3 games in overtime.
So what is it in the NHL? You don't lose point, or you get a point for
Yeah.
losing in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So right now they're still +1,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Or they're +2.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Then they rolled off just a bunch of wins before going to the tournament, beating a pretty decent St. Trace team, almost blowing a huge lead against Ironton.
Yeah. We were at Rooster B-Dubs.
B-Dubs,
for
yeah.
that.
They
That was
were
a-
up 18 at halftime.
And we left.
Yeah, we left and almost lost. So they ended up winning that game. Then they beat Minford by 9 at the Convo. That was, Rothwell had 19 points in that one.
Yeah.
So, and then they lost to Harvest Prep in the regional, which, Harvest Prep was pretty decent. So, they're a team that they got off to a slow start, but once they got going, man, they were really tough to stop. And, a lot of it was because of those 2 guys in Swikert and Rothwell. So, but you also had Carson Osborne, 8.7 points a game coming back. Connor Young, 6 points a game. And Connor Rogers, 4.5 points a game. Big thing for them. What else do you have besides those 5? Those 5 are going to be really good. Do you have anybody that can come off the bench? Do you have anyone at the JV level that was ready to step in and maybe make it to where you're not starting 5 seniors, you're starting 3 seniors and bringing a couple off the bench, but it's going to be big for them to fill in those gaps pretty quickly because they only played 7 last year, 6 a lot of times, but what are they going to do to get themselves back to the regionals again? And they're Division 6. So I think they have an excellent chance to get there. But even with them being Division 6, they are not my pick for the league champ. My league pick is the Eastern Brown Warriors. Last season went 17-7, 10-3 in the SHAC. They lost an absolute heartbreaker in overtime to Fairfield. We also saw them lose at the buzzer to Fairland.
Yeah.
And then we saw them lose to South Point when South Point decided
And that came
free
down to the
throws
wire as
were
well.
optional in that game. And they did not want to make them.
Yeah.
But they battled and battled and battled. And, when you got a coach with over 400 wins in Rob Buechler, you're going to have a chance most nights. They did graduate Big Luke Haney, 6 points, 7 rebounds a game. Wyatt hopped 4.7 points a game. So they lose 2 quality athletes, big, strong, talented kids. But, man, you return Cade Walkup, 9.8 points a game. He's a senior, 55 threes last year. Grady Barber, 13 points a game. He was really he was their go-to guy last year, and I think will be their go-to guy for the next couple of years as well. Price Murphy, a senior, 7 points a game. Braxton Vance, 5 points a game. Drew Edmiston, as a senior, 7.9 points a game. He shot 42% from 3, hitting 41 threes last year. So for me, Eastern's my pick to win the SHAC. It's going to be a dogfight every night for them with how talented, North Adams is, and that North Adams team is not going to give up the ship, easily. So that's going to be a really tight league throughout. For me, player of the year, it comes down to a variety. There's a variety of options here. Grady Barber, Jace Rothwell, Breeson Swikert. I think that it could come down to, who wins the league.
Right.
between them. But also, you have Carson Reed from Peebles, averaged 13 points, 6 points a game last year. Denver Clinton from Lynchburg Clay, averaged 17.7 points a game last year. I know their coaches picked Peebles, finished third, Lynchburg fourth. Maybe that could go to some coaching stuff because Coach Ari, really good coach down there at Peebles. Lynchburg, new coach. But, I mean, I watched Lynchburg last year. I liked what they had coming back. So, I mean, I figured they should be higher, but we'll kind of see. But I think in the SHAC, West Union's had some really rough years, but they've been playing freshmen and sophomores the last couple of years. So they could be, they could shake it up at some point. I'm not sure if they will, but there's a chance they could shake it up at some point if they've got everyone coming back, as they got a couple of good athletes down there, but they just haven't done a lot of winning. So my pick would be Eastern, then North Adams, and then I would probably say Lynchburg, but we'll kind of see there.
All right, we can go ahead and talk about the other side of the SHAC, the SHAC 2. Great year for Fairfield last year, 22-3, 11-2 in the SHAC 2. They lost to North Adams, who, we mentioned it in Tuesday's episode. The way the SHAC works is it is 10 teams split in half. The smaller 5 schools go into the SHAC 2, the bigger 5 into the SHAC 1. So you play the 4 on your side twice, that's 8 games, and you play the 5 on the other side once. So, and they all count towards league games. So you end up playing 13. So Fairfield goes and loses to North Adams out of the SHAC 1. They only lose one game in the SHAC 2, and it's to Fayetteville Perry. So they go 4-1 against the bigger schools. They go 7-1 against the teams in their conference. District champs getting all the way to the regional tournament. Now for Fairfield, graduating quite a bit. Larkin Friend, 15 points per game, 10 rebounds per game. If they did a SHAC 1 and SHAC 2 Player of the Year, Larkin Friend probably would have been Player of the Year in the SHAC 2. He was an all-SHAC selection, as was
4 triple-doubles.
Yeah, averaged a double-double as well. Trey House, another all-SHAC selection. He averaged 11 points per game. They're also graduating Gabe Fouch and Cade Miller, as well as John Ray Lario. Gave the Lions really good minutes down the stretch. We saw him have one of his better games, I believe, against North Adams last year. He played some meaningful minutes for the Lions that night. Now, coming back, Logan McIntosh, an all-SHAC selection, 12.5 points and 5 rebounds per game. And then after that, it's kind of a bit of a drop-off. They're kind of getting gutted in the top and the middle parts of their lineup. Chase Newman, coming back for his senior year, averaged 3 points per game as a junior. Griffin Friend, got a little bit of time on the floor as a freshman, averaged 2 points per game for the Lions.
Hit a big 3, though, at the Convo, I believe, against Fed Hawk.
Now, Friend... brothers, or is there any relation
brothers.
there? Okay, you never want to, you say, they got the same last name. They got to be related.
You can't assume brothers.
But I wasn't sure. But okay, so maybe he's able to step up a little bit. You can't really just say, he's his brother, so he's got to be as good or whatever. So, but those are kind of the 3 guys that catch your eye coming back for the Lions. When you look to the rest of the conference, right? You have a Fayetteville Perry team. You mentioned Joe B. Stewart. Coaching up the Rockets. Obviously, they're in the Southwest District, so after the season's over, you don't hear a lot about the Rockets, but 13-11, 7-6 in the SHAC 2. You're graduating your top scorer in Caleb Typus. Either way, 10 points per game, 35 from 3 on 140 attempts. They're also graduating Caden Jones, but they're bringing back Alex Bradshaw, an all-SHAC selection, as well as Charlie Kaufman, who averaged 8 points per game as a freshman. White Oak didn't have the best year last year, but they're bringing back a pretty good chunk of, their main guys. Sawyer Blair, 11 points per game. Brady Bradenberg, 10 points, 7 rebounds per game. And Xander Rhodes back with 9 points per game as well. But that kind of takes me to the team I'm going to go with. Give me the Manchester Greyhounds to take the SHAC 2 this year. 15-9, 7-6 last year. They graduate 2 seniors, 2 all-SHAC selections. Both averaged over 10 points per game. Connor Darnell, 13. Drew Kennedy, 10 and 6. They're bringing back Parker Hayslip in his Sophomore season, averaged a little over 10.5 points per game. Braylon Roberts, back for his senior year, averaged a little over 7.5. Leland Horner and Elijah Crabtree both averaged around 4 points per game last season. I've said it a couple times about a few different conferences. It just seems like it's going to be a year where it's all about the team that didn't lose the most, or I should say, it'll be about the team that lost the least and is bringing back the most. And I think Manchester is one of those teams that, yes, they lost a little bit. They lost their leading scorer. They lost 2 of their top 3 scores. But they're bringing back a pretty good amount of they're the middle of their pack guys in terms of scoring last season. I think Fairfield's still going to compete. You mentioned Joby Stewart over at Fayetteville Perry. I think they're going to compete as well. I think those are the 3 teams you're looking at in the top of the league. But I'm going to roll with Manchester for now. And, Player of the Year, it's the same thing to where there's only one selection in the whole SHAC. Mm-hmm. So if I had to pick a player from the SHAC too, I think it's hard not to pick Logan McIntosh. Obviously, Parker Hayslip is an option as well. Sawyer Blair maybe from White Oak. I think all of those guys are going to be all SHAC selections. But give me the Greyhounds in the SHAC 2 this year.
Yeah, I would. To me, I would just go Fayetteville just because of Joby Stewart. But I haven't seen the Greyhounds play in a couple years, but I saw them a couple years ago, and I liked what they had in the younger classes. Obviously, Darnell was really good, but Hayslip and Horner, both pretty good players when I saw them a couple years ago. And then obviously Roberts stepped up last year and had a nice year, so I like your pick as well. So I know Fairfield's really excited about their younger kids, but that's a lot to ask to replace. With what they had last year, but Coach Williams has won a lot of basketball games, and even though only 2 of them were really doing much when it came to their regional run, it's still a proud program over there.
One of the main reasons, and it did kind of come down to Manchester and Fayetteville for me, is I looked at their scores last year, and Manchester beat Fayetteville by 22 the first time, but only by 2 the second time. And I don't want to count Fairfield out.
Fayetteville was very, and maybe that's
Fayetteville knocked off Fairfield,
and maybe the biggest difference is going to be the coaching difference,
right?
Because they seemed like they were very up and down. Because, like you said, a 22-point loss and a 2-point loss, and you beat Fairfield. So I'm interested to see what they do. I mean, they're obviously just outside of our coverage area. Not by much,
right?
But yeah, if I was them, at this point they're the only team in the Southwest in the SHAC. But
with Ripley coming over,
here's what I'll say though: they're always in the small side, so they're probably in Division 6, Division 7, somewhere in there. Those small schools in the Cincinnati area are atrocious, because the better kids go to the bigger schools out of the private schools. So they have a ton of private schools, so they have a chance to make little tournament runs. But I think when they're really good, they could probably make bigger tournament runs in the Southeast, even if it's tougher from year to year to make those runs than it would be. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Technically they're closer to Cincinnati, but to me, kind of like Amanda, it doesn't make sense to not be in the district / region where you have a better chance for postseason success. I don't fully get it, but probably something with the school. I understand why a school wouldn't want to do that change, especially like if you're Fayetteville and maybe you had to go on the road to Waterford in the first round. Then it's a little different than if you had to go play Cincinnati Country Day, which is probably 45 minutes away as opposed to 3 hours. So. So SHAC should be fun. Always, if we're not there, check out Good Guys TV on the YouTube. They're good guys, and they do a pretty good job. So we haven't seen their schedule. So usually what we do whenever we're going to go do a SHAC game is we try to look at what they're doing and not go to the same game. Right. Because we want to make sure, like if I'm going to say North Adams and Eastern, they're probably going to be there. Right. So why would we go if we did it once last year.
But that wasn't even.
Yeah.
The funny thing was that North Adams Fairfield game wasn't even on their schedule.
Yeah.
So it was just like by accident.
Yeah. So, so like, why would we, instead of being able to cover 2 games, why would we double up and so, but yeah, so SHAC should be fun. Now, just a real quick thing, like we said it on the girls episode, but on this episode, we didn't really say it. Mid-State League, we only really cover half the teams in it. I think Circleville, Logan Elm are going to be interesting. Circleville, I'll see them on Wednesday at Zane Trace. So I'll have some. Saw them yesterday at Zane Trace, or whatever. So,
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. Check out the story on that or my tweets, whatever. And then I'll see Logan Elm. I think we're going to try to get there and stream at some point. But
Maya Wall, one of the more exciting guys, non-guester over at Circleville now.
Yep. So I think Bloom's still going to be really good. Yeah. Amanda's going to get better. I'm going to see Amanda also. I don't know which day that is. I haven't really thought about the Zane Trace tip-off schedule yet. But then now we cover the TVC, the whole thing. So all I know is Cobra Sharp is the best name. Returning point guard for Vinton County. I don't know how good Vinton County is going to be. Meggs is going to be really good. Carson Davis and his dad Ryan Davis, former coach at Bloom Carroll and Chesapeake, are now at Meggs. Meggs is big, long. They're going to be Division 4, so it's going to be really tough for them. But they're probably the favorite in the TVC. And then in the
how many times have we covered a Meggs sport?
At least twice.
Twice.
I was going to say baseball and volleyball, right?
Yep.
Hey, look who
baseball
knows.
3 years ago and volleyball 2 years ago.
Yeah. So welcome Marauders to the. Yeah. So I thought Belpre was going to be really good, but their best player moved to, maybe not their best, but their best big moved to Marietta. So that kind of makes it to where they're a little. Maybe not as good.
Marietta in like the Twin States thing or something.
Yeah, Twin States League. Yeah.
Something.
It's a big league with Warren, Fort Fry, and Point Pleasant.
Yeah.
The Big Blacks. Yeah. But see, and the reason why we're not talking about the TVC is I couldn't tell you anything about the hockey. Besides Belpre, I thought was going to be good, but they still might be. Waterford, I thought was interesting last year when I saw them. Their coach is a former D1 player, very tall. And that's it. That's all I know. Trumbull, I think, Fed Hawk, lost a lot, but I think they still had a couple solid players back. So we'll see. Carson Francis is going to cover a lot of TVC stuff. So he'll be able to tell you more via Twitter, or maybe we'll bring him on sometime when he's hanging out on Christmas break. I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe we'll utilize the new studio for an episode if we need a 3-man crew.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see.
You've probably seen it on the ticker, the Haynes Total Healthcare Coaches Call-In Show, debuting Friday night. So maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow night. I'm either uploading this Thursday or Friday. Either way, Friday of this week. So that would be the 29th, I believe, 11/29. Yeah. So that the night of November 29th, the Haynes Total Healthcare Coaches Call-In Show debuts. Jaron Cox, Christian Spradlin, Matt Hoops, all there. I'm not sure which coaches are calling in, but I'm guessing it'll be a pretty solid lineup for the debut episode. We'll be at Miami Trace. Matt Combs' head coaching debut for Untitled as they take on Miami Trace in a non-conference league opening matchup.
Yeah, which has always been, it's been at least the last 4 years, maybe longer than that. But
Untitled back to where their season ended last year.
Yeah, sad day. That was Nehemiah Wall.
It was.
He did it. So one thing I'll say about the Coach's Call-In Show, it will be. Hopefully, we know who it's going to be, so we could throw that out there.
It's like a schedule,
but we cover a lot of teams. It's going to be like a 2-hour show. So your favorite,
it's going to start at like 9:30.
Yeah, your favorite coach may not be on every week. It might be every other week. So we're going to try to get as much coverage out. We talk about a lot of stuff. They're going to talk about a lot of stuff, and they're going to do more like the night of. So, like, let's say they heck, to start, they could talk about Ironton football to start because they should probably know the final of that.
Yeah.
By the
Can we
time-
get Pendleton on there?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a basketball coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, but,
But
it's not really.
it's-
It's an all sports.
Yeah, it's going to be. It's going to be in the fall too, as long
I
as.
think the logo has a basketball on it, but I believe it's centered. Like, we'll obviously probably have it in the spring as well. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and I would be very surprised if either Ben Ackley or Matt Combs one of them aren't calling.
Right.
I think we're going to try to make it to where at least one of the coaches from the game we're at each Friday will be calling in. So 9:30, November 29th, Friday night, the Haynes Total Healthcare Coaches Call-In Show makes its debut. So
You sure?
I'm not sure if we're going to make a separate Twitter account for that or not. I feel like we probably should, but
Yeah.
considering we have one.
I could get an extra follower out of it.
There you
At
go.
702 right now.
There you go.
I only lost a few with the last purge of the bots. So I think I was at like 706.
I've
or
been
something.
getting so many bots following
Oh,
me
it's
lately.
so
I've
many.
had like 7 or 8 the last
Yeah, I was-
3 or 4
I was
days.
pumped because I was like, I got to do follow. Oh, that's definitely not a real person. But it's all right. It's okay. It's
All right.
It's okay.
That'll wrap it up for.
We've been here a long time.
Yeah, we've been here since like 2 o'clock. It's been like almost 6 hours.
Yeah.
So. If it makes you feel any better, we had 12 pages of notes for both the boys and girls preview. So if you don't think we do our homework, we do. We
Yeah.
do it. I don't think a lot of other places do quite as much prep work. Not to toot our own horn, but
Yeah,
I think
so
you're not going to get
If
this
we
kind
said any
of.
names wrong, we apologize.
Yeah.
But that also might be the 6 hours of.
We probably talked about at least 100 different players throughout the previews. I'm just going to say it now. You're not going to get this kind of preview
Right.
from.
Especially with how much we cover. And that's with like, think about next year, which we'll see with you, but we'll be talking about the TVC fully next
3
year.
more conferences.
Yeah.
I mean, both TVCs, maybe the MSL if you decide to do
so
that.
we'll have even more coverage, yay, in the future. But it's a lot. But we have some pride. So.
Yeah. Go SOSA.
Yeah, and also over this week, which you probably would have already seen it, but check out our Twitters for any updates. I know Derek is at Adida Miami Trace tonight, girls. Carson is at Jackson and Alexander girls. So, I mean, check out all the SOSA social medias. I'm sure Brock Nutter will be out at some basketball games. I think he's the one doing updates on Friday from the Ironton game as well. So, check it out. So
I was going to try and check for an update on that Jackson game, and it looks like Alexander's out to a 28-8 lead. So
All right.
either Jackson's not off to a great start or Alexander's not too bad. But
yeah. Here's some Big Boom AJ
he broke his leg.
broke his foot and still won with a power boom.
I know.
Yeah, that's a great name. For
It
That's
is.
a great name for a move. But yeah, girls basketball, White Oak just beat Manchester.
Okay.
Yeah, throw that on the ticker. Don't do it because it would be like for 30 seconds of
Yeah.
anything.
All right. I think that'll wrap it up unless you have anything extra you would like to.
No.
add. Who did you say you said White Oak beat Manchester
Yeah, it was a lot to not very much.
in girls?
Yep.
I just wanted to check and see where I had. Oh, that's boys. Give me a second. I just wanted to check and see where I had those. White Oak and Manchester.
You didn't talk
Okay,
about
I didn't
Manchester.
I didn't really talk
Yeah,
about
Manchester.
Manchester. I said White Oak lost a little bit, but it looks like they might still be above Manchester.
Well,
in
they
the SHAC
but they could have a good freshman class coming in. Who knows?
Right.
But I know for a long time White Oak struggled, and then that graduating class from last year helped make them pretty relevant again. So
All right. Like I said, be on the lookout for the Haynes Total Healthcare Coaches Call-In Show this Friday. Normal episodes will resume next Tuesday. We'll obviously recap all of the weekend's action and preview some of the upcoming weekend's actions. That'll do it for today's episode of SOSA Overtime, presented by Perfection.
happy Thanksgiving.